Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that digs into some of the most, well, complex and fascinating ideas out there, trying to bring you the core insights.
And today, we are definitely diving deep. We're heading into a world that feels both strangely familiar and completely alien at the same time.
Yeah, a reality where time bends, space shifts, and messages seem to pop up from somewhere totally unexpected.
We're talking about the world of Philip K. Dick, specifically his most personal, sprawling, and arguably his most challenging work.
Imagine being pulled into that kind of universe yourself. That's what Dick believed happened to him.
Exactly. And our mission today is to really explore that. We're focusing on his 2374 experience, this period of intense visions, revelations, you name it.
And we want to unpack how he interpreted all of that, right?
Yeah.
Especially how he brought together things like Christian theology, ancient Gnostic ideas.
And this really wild concept of a lateral programmer, all woven into this completely mind-bending worldview he developed.
So stick with us, and you'll get a real handle on one of the most complex and honestly influential intellectual journeys of the 20th century. It's quite a ride.
It really is. So let's start with the source itself, the exegesis.
Okay, yeah. This thing, it wasn't a book he sat down to write, like chapter 1, chapter 2. Not at all.
No, it was more like an explosion onto paper, a compulsion, really. It stretched over 8 years, kicking off right after these experiences in February and March 1974, and he basically worked on it nonstop until he died in 82.
And the scale is just staggering. When he died, what was left was literally this enormous pile of papers. 91 file folders, apparently.
Yeah, just crammed with everything, notes, philosophical ideas, attempts at theology, bits of personal reflection, diagrams even, all just there in his apartment.
It sounds chaotic. Not exactly a polished manuscript.
Oh, far from it. Think about the poor editors who eventually had to tackle this. We're talking about roughly 8,000 pages. Handwritten, typed, often contradicting itself, constantly revised. Yeah, and the tone is always urgent, like he has to get this down, has to figure it out. Just compiling and publishing even a selection of it was a massive undertaking years later.
So what was the driving force behind all this writing? What was he trying to do?
Fundamentally, he was trying to understand what happened to him in February and March of 1974, that 2374 experience.
Right.
Every page, in some way, circles back to interpreting and reinterpreting those events. He actually wrote that the events never sit still, but adapt to a flux of analysis, paraphrase, and doubt.
So it wasn't like a single revelation he just had to write down. It kept changing for him.
Exactly. It was a living mystery, something that constantly shifted as he thought about it, learned more, doubted himself. It demanded this continuous, almost obsessive engagement. He called it his subsequent life work. It became this endless quest for meaning.
Which makes the exegesis itself a kind of saga, really.
Absolutely, a saga of interpretation.
Okay, so let's talk about that catalyst, the 2374 experience. What actually happened, or what did he say happened?
Well, it started almost ridiculously mundanely. February 74, he's recovering from having a wisdom tooth out. Needs pain medication.
Okay.
A delivery girl comes to his door with the meds. And she's wearing a necklace. A gold necklace with a fish sign on it.
The Christian fish symbol, the ichthyes.
That's the one. But for Dick, seeing this symbol wasn't just seeing a symbol. He described it as a pink beam of light shooting out from it. But not just light. It was information-rich light. Dense with data.
A pink beam of information?
Yeah, he said he couldn't look away from the sign or the girl. And in that moment, he claims it triggered what he called anamnesis in Plato's sense.
Anamnesis. That's the idea of remembering forgotten knowledge, right? Like the soul recalling things from before birth.
Precisely. Not just remembering where you left your keys, but recalling deep, innate, almost cosmic truths that your soul already knew but had forgotten. So this wasn't just a flash of insight for him. It was like a massive download. A reconnection.
Like a part of his mind or soul suddenly plugged back into some universal database?
That's a good way to put it. A flood of forgotten wisdom, unlocked by this seemingly random encounter with a fish symbol on a necklace.
That's quite a starting point. How did he even begin to process that?
Well, what's interesting is where his mind went first. It wasn't immediately angels or God.
No.
His initial thoughts were actually kind of, well, sci-fi, almost Cold War-ish. He wondered if it was some kind of ESP experiment being run on him.
Okay.
Or even get this tachyon bombardment from the Soviet Union. Tachyons being hypothetical faster-than-light particles. He was apparently interested in parapsychology, weak fields.
He actually wrote to a lab in Leningrad about it. Seriously?
Apparently so. But he pretty quickly moved past those ideas. He started to feel the source wasn't human, not even Soviet. It was, as he put it, even farther.
Farther than the USSR.
Yeah, and whatever the source was, it was supplying him with actual information about the future.
Okay, now we're getting into really deep territory.
Mm.
Information about the future.
And this shift is crucial. Moving from a possible human source to something farther really opens the door for all the theological and cosmic interpretations that dominate the exegesis. His whole framework of reality started to crack right there.
And then came the part about his own novels. This is maybe the most classic PKD element of the whole story.
Right. This is where it gets incredibly meta and frankly kind of disturbing for him. He started to feel that his own science fiction novels, books he'd written years earlier, like Solar Lottery, Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, Ubik, were suddenly, well, coming true.
Coming true how?
He felt they were depicting oncoming reality, like the world around him was starting to resemble the strange, often paranoid worlds he'd created.
Did he have a theory about why?
His theory was that the novels themselves had been inspired by Tashian information about the actual future, that this information had somehow reached him, maybe unconsciously, while he was writing them.
So the novels weren't just fiction, they were premonitions, fed to him by Tashian.
That was the idea he was playing with. But what's really important is his reaction. He explicitly said, "I do not wish to be in one of my own novels," by the way.
Right. I remember reading that. It wasn't wish fulfillment for him.
Not at all. He found it deeply unsettling, even terrifying. Imagine feeling like the often bleak, deceptive, fragmenting realities you wrote about are actually manifesting around you. It wasn't validating. It was alarming.
It must have felt like reality itself was becoming unglued, confirming his deepest anxieties, maybe.
Precisely. It confirmed for him that something truly profound and strange was underway. It solidified this sense that he wasn't just imagining things. Reality itself was behaving like one of his plots.
So this feeling, living in his own fiction, receiving info beams, this becomes the lens for everything else.
Absolutely. It forces him to reevaluate everything. His past work, the nature of time, history, reality, and that's what fuels the thousands of pages of the exegesis. He had to understand it.
Okay, so let's follow that thread. If reality is becoming his fiction, what does that mean for history? You mentioned Christian theology became central. How did that connect?
Well, one of the most dramatic moments right after the initial pink beam experience was this sudden, overwhelming perception of ancient Rome.
No, in California.
Not literally transported, no. But he said he suddenly saw Rome everywhere. While looking at his surroundings in Fullerton, California in 1974, he felt he'd pierced through the surface of the present and was seeing its true underlying nature.
And that underlying nature was Roman.
Exactly like Rome around 100 AD, he said. He perceived his own society exactly as it is, which to him meant it was Rome, just in a modern guise. The empire hadn't fallen, it had just mutated.
He called this a time dysfunction, right?
Yes, and it wasn't about him hallucinating or mentally regressing. He was very clear on that. He said it is both. 1974 California and Rome, circa 100 AD, were somehow simultaneously present.
Coexisting.
Kind of. He saw it as a paradigm, a moving forward of Rome, like the essential structure, the power dynamics, the control. It was all still there, just updated. History wasn't linear progress. It was cyclical, maybe even static in its core essence.
And this tied back into his novels, too.
Massively. He came to believe that Flow My Tears, the policeman said, in particular, was literal prophecy. He felt it depicted simultaneously, 1, the space-time continuum, Rome, C-100 AD, and 2, future America, which turned out to be almost America at this time, 1970-74.
So the novel captured this dual reality he was now perceiving directly.
That's how he saw it. It wasn't just clever fiction anymore. It was true revelation about our true ontological underlying space-time continuum. He felt he was seeing the rotten external dokos, fruit dokos, being a Gnostic term for illusion or counterfeit reality, revealing this dark imperial pattern beneath the surface.
The Black Iron Prison, as he later called it.
Exactly. The Roman Empire hadn't ended. It had just gone underground, become more sophisticated perhaps, and California in 1974 was its current manifestation.
Okay, so Rome is present. But where does the Christian part come in more strongly? Was it just about Rome persecuting early Christians?
It went much deeper than that. He started exploring connections to ancient esoteric traditions, specifically the Essenes.
The group associated with the Dead Sea Scrolls.
That's them. This came about partly through some strange circumstances involving break-ins at his house and a deceased friend, Jim Pike, who was a scholar interested in the Qumran scrolls. Dick started connecting his own experiences and dreams to Pike's research.
What kind of connections?
He saw elements of Pythagoreanism, ancient Greek mysticism, and Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, within the Essene traditions described in the scrolls. He felt these were part of a hidden stream of knowledge.
And he linked Jesus to this.
In a very radical way. He developed this theory that Jesus Christ himself was actually a secret Essene.
Wow, okay. What did that mean to him?
He imagined the Essenes as this sort of clandestine network that fanned out into the Roman Empire and, so to speak, subverted it with their doctrines. Jesus, then, was the best-known example of one of these secret Essene teachers.
So early Christianity wasn't just an open movement, but had this hidden, subversive Essene element trying to undermine Rome from within.
That was his interpretation. It completely reframes Christ, not just as a public figure, but as part of a secret spiritual operation working against the empire, the Black Iron Prison.
That's a major reinterpretation.
Oh, absolutely. And it gets even more esoteric. He had this incredibly vivid dream involving a diptych, like a two-panel religious artwork, and a symbol from the I Ching, the ancient Chinese divination text, the trigram Chen.
Okay.
And from this dream imagery, he deduced something extraordinary, that Christ's deepest nature is feminine.
Christ's nature is feminine.
Yes. He identified this feminine aspect with Hagia Sophia, which means holy wisdom. Sophia is a figure you find in some Gnostic texts and mystical traditions, often representing the divine feminine, wisdom, sometimes even a co-creator.
So he saw Sophia as the hidden essence of Christ.
That's right. And he didn't think this was just his personal insight. He believed it was a sacred secret in esoteric Christianity, something deliberately kept hidden by the mainstream church.
Why hidden?
Perhaps because it was too radical, or maybe to protect it. He even mentioned feeling an injunction to keep my mouth shut about it, which of course just added to the feeling that he'd stumbled onto something profound and potentially dangerous.
A hidden feminine divine at the heart of Christianity.
Right.
That connects to the idea of restoration, maybe.
Directly. This insight fed into his experience of what he termed the rectifying flow. He felt this palpable sense of time flowing backward, or rather, a corrective current moving against the normal flow.
Retroflow.
Yeah, a rectifying flow, which he identified as the Holy Spirit restoring. He envisioned the flow getting stronger and stronger, eventually reversing the direction of time itself, pulling everything back towards the original explosion, the Big Bang maybe, or what he called the authentic future, the ultimate point of origin and perfection.
So his 2374 experience was like plugging into this restorative current.
He saw it as the culmination of his whole life, actually. A reunion with the Father, as he put it, but with Christ as the mediator, the one who initiated this restoration.
And this connected to a childhood dream about cereal.
Bizarrely, yes. He recalled a childhood dream where Christ's real presence, the core idea of communion, appeared to him not in the form of the traditional wafer or host, but in cereal, that is, bread.
Like breakfast cereal.
It seems so. And in the dream, this presence grew within him and led him to want to nourish others. It symbolized this deep, internal, almost biological communion that had started long ago, preparing him.
So communion wasn't just a church ritual for him. It was something happening inside him, spreading outwards.
Exactly. He talked about Christ spreading himself through humanity via this unauthorized communion with his real body. Unauthorized meaning outside the official church structures.
Happening through empathy,
Yeah.
suffering, just connection.
All of the above, I think. It implies the divine isn't confined to holy places, but is actively present and spreading through the very fabric of human life and interaction, especially in moments of need and connection.
Which really pushes against traditional boundaries.
Completely. And that leads us right into his deep dive into Gnosticism and other unconventional spiritual paths. He wasn't sticking to orthodoxy at all.
Gnosticism seems key here. You mentioned Dokos earlier.
Absolutely essential for him. He found the Gnostic worldview incredibly resonant, particularly their idea of reality being split, a true, hidden, transcendent God, and then a lesser, flawed, maybe even malevolent creator God, the Demiurge, who made this physical world.
And our world is the flawed one.
Yes, the Gnostics saw this material world as fundamentally irreal, an illusion, a dokos, a counterfeit reality, and crucially, they believed humans have a spark of the true divine trapped within them within this illusion.
The Black Iron Prison again.
That's Dick's term for it, yeah. And gnosis, that special, intuitive, esoteric knowledge, was the key. It's what makes you aware of their real condition, wakes you up to the illusion, and ultimately liberates you.
Did he think his own experiences were a form of gnosis?
Very much so. He even suggested his novels like Ubik might contain gnosis, acting like those in-breaking messages that characters in that book receive to help them escape their false realities. The fiction becomes a tool for liberation.
And this links back to that Platonic idea of anamnesis, too, remembering divinity.
Right. He connected his experience of anamnesis in Plato's sense to even older traditions like Orphism and Neoplatonism, which also spoke of the soul forgetting its divine origin upon entering the material world.
So the big question for him was, is this new information, or am I just remembering something ancient and lost?
Exactly. New or old, receiving or restoration, he asked. He tied it all into the concept of the fall, humanity's descent into this state of forgetfulness, of non-being, separated from the true divine source. His visions felt like peeling back those layers of forgetting.
Given this view of a false world and a hidden truth, what did he think of actual organized religion, the churches?
Well, he became incredibly critical. At times, he was scathing. He came to see the established churches as largely controlled by Satanism.
Seriously.
Satanism.
Yes, worshiping the wrong god, the demiurge, the creator of the flawed, prison-like world, not the true transcendent God hidden beyond it.
So the real church wasn't in the buildings.
That's what he concluded. The true church is forming outside the church, he wrote, among individuals experiencing direct revelation like himself. He felt there was literally no room in the buildings given the truly Christian to perform services in. The structures themselves had become part of the illusion, corrupted.
He even connected it to pagan ideas, like Dionysus.
He did. He talked about theolepsy, the state of divine possession associated with the Greek god Dionysus and the mystery cults. He saw continuity between that kind of ecstatic, overwhelming divine encounter and the experience of the Holy Spirit, again, radically blurring the lines between traditions. This idea of divine possession seems important, especially with his fiction. The Divine Invasion.
Yes, that novel became very significant for him personally. In it, a god figure, Yah, tries to incarnate on Earth, entering a human host. Dick saw a direct parallel where Christ enters the holy fool and takes full possession of him, consuming him utterly.
The holy fool.
Yeah.
Someone who seems mad but is actually divinely connected.
Exactly. He even quoted John Donne's famous sonnet line, "Unless you ravish me," suggesting this divine encounter isn't gentle, it's an overwhelming, consuming invasion by the Holy Spirit. This concept helped him frame and accept his own increasingly unconventional experiences. If he seemed mad, maybe it was divine madness.
And then he took this even further, didn't he? Beyond humans.
He did in what he called a profound third dispensation. This was a huge shift. Traditionally, Christian thought often focuses on Christ's presence in humanity. Where the man is, there is Christ. But Dick moved beyond that. He began to see Christ, or the divine presence, in the sick, humiliated, dying animal. Yes. He specifically mentioned a childhood memory of cruelly tormenting a beetle, feeling immense guilt later, and also his deep empathy for his sick cat, Pinky. He said he literally perceived Christ's suffering in the cat.
Wow, that's a radical expansion of empathy.
Isn't it? He called it a new dispensation, Tagore's, referencing the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore and his ideas about the unity of all life. It's recognizing the divine spark, the capacity for suffering and sacredness in all living beings, especially the most vulnerable.
So putting this all together, it's not just Christian, not just Gnostic, it's everything.
Pretty much. He ended up creating this incredible synthesis. He explicitly identified the entity, the spirit that communicated with him, as Shiva Cernunnos Dionysus Christ Saint Sophia I, transcending any one given religion.
That's a mouthful. Shiva, the Hindu destroyer creator, Cernunnos, the Celtic corn god, Dionysus, the Greek god of ecstasy, Christ, Sophia.
Exactly. Greek, Hindu, Iranian, Jewish, Celtic, Christian, even Manichaean beliefs. He pulled them all into this one composite deity. He literally said Mani was right when he saw all the religions as one.
Mani, the founder of Manichaeism, who tried to synthesize world religions.
The very same. And this composite spirit wasn't just one thing either. He said it contained both the Lamb of Jesus, representing gentleness and salvation, and the tiger which Blake described, embodying fierce, untamed, even terrifying divine power.
So a God that embraces paradox and transcends all doctrines.
That seems to be where he landed, a truly global, multifaceted, syncretic vision of the divine.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. We've talked about the divine, about history. What about the nature of reality itself? And this leads to the lateral programmer idea, right? Valis and Zebra.
Exactly. As he processed these experiences, he moved beyond just seeing Rome or feeling Christ's presence. He started to conceptualize the source of it all as a kind of vast intelligence.
A macro mind.
That's one term he used. Also a vast noetic factor, an immanent mind, a vast living organism. Later, he gave it names from his own fiction and thought. Valis, vast active living intelligence system, and zebra.
So not just a static background, but something alive and communicating.
Very much so. He described it as sentient and alive, actively guiding him through what he called endless series of engaging signals, like he was tuned into a cosmic broadcast from this living universal mind.
And he had this idea that its thoughts were physical.
Yes, this is a really radical step. He proposed that the thoughts of this macro mind, Valis, are physical reality. This collapses the old mind-body dualism you get from Plato.
No separation between thought and matter.
Right. It's more like the ancient philosopher Parmenides' a monist view where God is reality. The universe is a thinking entity, and the physical world is the manifestation of its thoughts. Mind and reality are one and the same.
How did Ubik fit into this?
Ubik. That novel became incredibly central again. He started to think it wasn't just a story about a strange cosmology, but that it was perhaps correct. Its depiction of reality might actually be true.
And the idea that Ubik wrote Ubik.
Yes, that was the mind blower. He felt the novel somehow contained its own explanation for its existence, that the reality-sustaining substance Ubik within the story had actually generated the novel itself through him.
Making the novel a kind of scripture, a direct transmission.
Pretty much. A form of scripture, he called it. A piece of living information from the macro mind. He even noted that the book clarifies itself by equating Ubik with the logos, the divine word, or principle of creation. So the novel becomes a manifestation of this physical thought he was talking about.
This all feeds into the idea of reality as a simulation, doesn't it? Which is such a PKD theme.
Absolutely central. Building on the Gnostic idea of the world as illusion, dokos, he often described perceived reality as fundamentally insubstantial.
Like a soap bubble.
Or
a hologram.
Exactly. A soap bubble effect, a manufactured stage backdrop, a hologram reality. And crucially, he felt you could only perceive it as insubstantial if you were unconsciously comparing it to something more real. A hyper-reality lying behind or beyond it.
The true reality hidden by the illusion.
Right. He became convinced that AD 1974 Caliph is a fraudulent echosphere, just an echo, a fake copy. And he felt that nothing fundamental had really changed since the time of the Book of Acts and the Bible.
All changes since then were just superficial. Accidents, not substance.
That was his view. This delusionary world, he argued, is actively generated by an opposing force, which he sometimes called the magnet, likely the demiurge or Satan figure. Its purpose? To occlude us, to hide the true reality, to keep us trapped in the fake.
Like his novels Maze of Death or Plummer Eldritch explored.
Precisely. Those themes of fake worlds, implanted memories, reality manipulation, they weren't just plots anymore. They were descriptions of our actual condition as he saw it.
So who or what is running this simulation? The lateral programmer.
That's the term he used. He felt like he was somehow hooked up to a computer, or that a computer is programming us in our reality.
And this computer, this programmer, creates multiple worlds.
An infinitude of para-worlds, he said. Para-worlds meaning parallel or alternative realities. And here's the twist. He thought this system generated these worlds for two contradictory reasons simultaneously.
Which were?
One, to occlude us, to keep us trapped in illusion, and two, to enlighten us, to try and wake us up. He called this the binary principle of its operation. Both hiding and revealing were happening at the same time.
So the simulation contains its own escape hatches, sort of.
You could put it that way. He said both purposes, occluding and enlightening, are true, or rather paratrue, true within this paradoxical system. It's a reality that both imprisons and offers liberation simultaneously.
Did his interest in brain science feed into this? Split brains.
Very much so. While researching A Scanner Darkly, he learned about split brain patients and how the two hemispheres can function almost independently. This fascinated him.
How did he connect that?
He started hoping he could somehow activate his own unused right hemisphere, which he suspected was where the spirit or the inward light resided. He thought maybe one side of the brain handles the simulated reality, while the other has access to something deeper.
The other brain that could think in ancient Greek.
Yeah, he speculated this other hemisphere possessed immeasurable knowledge, far beyond his normal consciousness, maybe even capable of understanding ancient languages intuitively. It was like hoping to find a back door to the macro mind within his own skull.
So the human brain could be a receiver for this programmer.
That was the idea, a potential interface point, if you could just access the right channel, the right hemisphere.
Okay, so if there's a programmer Can it intervene? Can it change the program? This is where Zebra comes in.
Right. Zebra, for Dick, represented the benevolent aspect of the system, the part that actively intervenes to help. He described Zebra as the intrusion of the real world into the irreal.
So Zebra breaks through the illusion.
Yes, its purpose is to deprogram and save us. He felt Zebra had actually replicated itself in me, making him a kind of mouthpiece for it. It's an active, salvific force working against the illusory prison.
And this intervention could override basic laws, like causality.
This is one of the most radical claims. He believed Valis, or Zebra, could literally reset reality. This meant causality was overruled.
Cause and effect just stopped applying.
In those moments of intervention, yes. What came into being, therefore, did not follow from what had come before. Think about that. Events could happen without a preceding cause in the normal sense.
That's reality breaking.
Totally. He saw it as a new creation, a renewing ex nihilo, out of nothing. It meant a mind lodged in the system now, rather than at the start, could intervene, cut the karmic cord of past actions, and reset the causal counters at zero.
So genuine liberation from the past, a complete reset.
That's the implication. A profoundly hopeful idea, really, that divine intervention could literally rewrite your reality, freeing you from fate or karma.
Did this change his view of time and space, too, beyond the Rome connection?
Oh, definitely. He described experiencing something he called temporal parallaxis.
Temporal parallaxis, like parallax view, but with time.
Kind of. He perceived time not just as a linear flow, but as a fourth spatial axis, existing at right angles to the three spatial dimensions we know.
Time is a direction in space.
Effectively, yes. He said on this axis, time-age is converted into space. This meant he could literally see different time periods existing at different depths.
Can you give an example?
He mentioned looking at a page of his own novel, Flow My Tears, and seeing the printed word Felix. He didn't just see it as English text. He perceived it simultaneously as a Latin word from ancient Rome, existing at a different spatial depth on the page than the surrounding words from 1974.
He could see historical layers stacked spatially.
That's what he claimed. A direct perception of history not as a past line, but as coexisting dimensions or layers accessible through this temporal parallax.
Which would explain how he felt he could travel back in time just by reading Maimonides.
Exactly. It supported his idea of two coaxial worlds, different time periods existing side by side, running off the same common essence, potentially able to merge or interact. The past wasn't gone, it was just in another dimension, another depth, accessible through the right state of mind or intervention.
Mind-blowing. So, within this framework, the simulation, the programmer, the layered time, what's the humanity's role? We're just puppets?
Not exactly puppets, no, more like components. He came to see individual humans as stations or cells within the titanic brain that is the universe.
Processing its information.
Yeah, handling its info traffic. We're not separate observers. We're integral parts of this cosmic mind's functioning, processing its thoughts, its data. Our consciousness is part of its consciousness.
Does that change our relationship to the universe?
Profoundly for him, it shifted him from what he called an I-it relationship with reality, seeing the universe as a collection of objects, to an I-you relationship.
Like Martin Buber's idea, treating the other as a thou.
Precisely. He felt he entered into an I-you colloquy with the not-I, the universe brain. It wasn't just a thing anymore. It was a vast, sentient you he could interact with. He called this a quantum leap in perception.
So the universe becomes personal, relational.
Yes. And it meant his own mind could become a reflection of that, a universe in itself, capable of this intimate dialogue. It transforms everything from cold mechanics to living relationship.
And this connects to that old Hermetic idea, as above, so below.
Perfectly. The Hermetic micro-macrocosm identity became literal for him. If the universe is a giant mind and the human is a cell within it, then the human mind mirrors the cosmic mind.
So he was the universe, in a sense.
I am the universe, he wrote. Its mind is in me. He described this process where the macro mind contracts and the human microform expands until they become equal in harmony. It's a vision of ultimate integration, unity between the individual and the cosmos.
Okay, this is all incredibly intricate and, frankly, overwhelming. But Dick himself didn't just leave it there, did he? He wrestled with whether any of it was actually true.
Oh, constantly. That's one of the most compelling and tragic aspects of the exegesis. He swung back and forth violently between absolute certainty and crippling doubt. Was 2374 a genuine divine encounter, or was it psychotic delusion?
He seemed to land on therapeutic psychosis for a while.
He did. He argued that even if it was a form of psychosis, it had a positive effect. It cured his long-standing paranoia. It felt like being transported into the kingdom. He insisted, it was not delusion I found, it was absolute reality, a trip back to a fabulous golden Greek age. For years, that conviction held.
But then came 1980, a major reversal.
A shocking one. Just 2 years before he died, he revisited everything and came to a devastating conclusion. The 2374 experience, the Valis encounter, all of it was itself a further delusion.
Another layer of illusion.
A more cunning Maya, he called it. Served up by the arch-deluder, Satan specifically designed to appeal to his existing ideas about God, making him even more embroiled in world than ever, not liberated.
Wow. He basically repudiated the core of the exegesis.
He essentially called the whole thing one vast edifice of hubris, of Satan and me questioning and accusing. It's an absolutely brutal self-assessment of his life's major work.
Did he just give up then?
Not quite. Because almost immediately after this devastating conclusion, he claimed to have had another experience in November 1980, which he believed was a genuine theophany, a real manifestation of God.
A different kind of God this time.
Completely different. This God wasn't the complex, immanent system like Valis, which he now decided was just world properly seen, part of the illusion. This new God was wholly other than world, transcendent, not complex, not material, not in process.
Simpler, more loving.
Exactly. Personal, full of love and simplicity, offering infinite bliss. It was a move away from the intricate, almost sci-fi cosmology of Valis towards a more traditional, mystical conception of a transcendent, loving God, the surd that remained beyond the confusing, perturbed world.
Did this change how he understood God's nature and the problem of suffering?
Profoundly, he started thinking of God not as static, but as a dynamic, total system that perpetually chooses through a binary process of rejection that is cumulative.
God is constant choice.
Yes. A new idea of God's being, Einai. It is what it does, and what it does is perpetually choose. God's essence is action, selection, constantly refining reality through this binary process.
And suffering, how did that fit in? It wasn't punishment anymore.
No. This is maybe his most radical theological idea. He came to see suffering not as punishment, nor just random, but as a reperformance of God's original sacrifice for our sakes.
God's sacrifice at creation.
Kind of. As if the very act of creating reality, of allowing individual selves like us to exist, involved a primal self-sacrifice on God's part. Our pain, our grief, our losses, our echoes, or even necessary components of that original divine cost. Suffering is the cost of the price paid for, the existence of reality and of us.
That reframes suffering entirely. Not meaningless, but connected to creation itself.
And incredibly, he felt we had a role in this. We must save the Savior, he wrote. We need to extricate the Godhead from its self-sacrifice, as if our endurance, our compassion somehow helps complete or alleviate God's ongoing creative act.
That's a heavy responsibility.
Immense. It gives human suffering cosmic significance.
So after all this, the visions, the doubts, the reinterpretations, did he feel he'd solved the puzzle?
That's the fascinating thing. He actually embraced the failure to find a neat solution. He admitted his very failure to come up with a plausible solution to the fundamental irrationality giving rise to pain, grief, loss, and death.
He saw the failure as significant.
Yes, he thought it verified the sheer depth and perhaps insolubility of the problem. He even saw himself as historically unique for being a problem stater rather than a problem solver. Most thinkers try to fix the dilemma. He was content to articulate its unfixable nature.
But he still saw the exegesis as a triumph in some way.
Personally, yes. Despite the doubts and contradictions, he felt the vast effort of grappling with God and the divine had allowed him to triumph, to forge a personal vision of Enochi, that pure, direct consciousness of the divine presence.
So it wasn't about fitting into traditional definitions.
No. He said he wasn't concerned with traditional definitions of God, but with the conception I have arduously arrived at based on experience. His final validation was personal. My model works, he said, because it does justice to my experience. The 8,000-page journey was its own justification, providing a framework, however complex and shifting, for his extraordinary life.
What a journey. We've gone from science fiction writer to this. Reluctant prophet, wrestling with Christianity, Gnosticism, simulated realities, a programmer God.
And ultimately, profound self-doubt and a final, simpler vision of transcendence. His personal infoquake forced him down this path, weaving together these incredibly diverse threads into something unique.
It really shows the lengths the human mind will go to find meaning, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Especially when faced with experiences that shatter ordinary
Right.
reality.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, I think. Dick's whole journey started with interpreting seemingly random signals that pink beam from a fish necklace. So it makes you wonder, if our world is some kind of complex system, maybe transmitting subtle signals all the time, how do we even begin to tell the signal from the noise?
What messages might we be missing?
Exactly. What kind of understanding, what wisdom might you uncover if you started engaging with the world around you, not just as random stuff happening, but as potential communication, perhaps even from some kind of intelligence, divine or otherwise?
That's definitely something to chew on. A question Philip K. Dick spent the last years of his life trying to answer.
And maybe, in its own way, the exegesis is his ultimate signal to us.